The security guard didn't even look up when I walked past him with a half-empty bottle of imported water in my hand and a made-up name tag swinging from my chest. I nodded like I belonged, like I was supposed to be there, like my hands weren't shaking. I told myself I'd only peek. Just 5 minutes. The moment I stepped inside the glass doors of the rooftop ballroom, I saw her. She was already dancing, spinning, laughing, with him. Not someone I knew. Not someone from her LinkedIn. This wasn't a colleague. This was someone who placed his hand far too low on her back, and she didn't move it. This was someone who whispered something in her ear that made her grin like she was back in college, wild, bold, untouchable. And for the first time in months, she looked alive. She never looked like that with me anymore. I ducked behind a tall floral centerpiece near the dessert table. I must have looked ridiculous. $40 at the thrift store for this blazer, pretending to be Martin DeWitt, systems consultant, when in reality, I could barely consult my own emotions. My heart slammed against my ribs as I watched him offer her a chocolate-dipped strawberry from the tray, one she bit without using her hands. And then, the crowd laughed. He took a bow. She curtsied. And they toasted to something. I don't know what. But it wasn't me. That's when it hit me. They weren't hiding. They weren't being careful. They were comfortable. Like this had been going on for a long time. Like everyone in that room already knew. Except me. Except the idiot in second-hand shoes clutching his phone like a lifeline, recording 20 seconds of betrayal he'd probably watch 100 times later trying to figure out what went wrong. The night should have ended there. But it didn't. Because just as I turned to leave, someone tapped the mic near the stage and said, "And now, a very special guest will join us for tonight's final toast, the woman who closed the Levington deal, the one and only. Erin Thorne. My wife." Applause erupted. She strutted toward the mic, heels clicking, champagne in hand, and leaned in like a queen about to give her victory speech. And then she said it clear as glass. "To my partner, not just in work, but in life. Roman, you saved me." I couldn't breathe. Everyone clapped. Roman raised his glass and winked. They kissed. On the lips. I stumbled backward, crashed into a waiter, knocked over a tower of wine glasses. All heads turned, including hers. Her eyes met mine, and her smile vanished. For one long, dragging moment, nobody said a word. The clinking of the toppled wine glasses still echoed somewhere behind me, but my ears were ringing too loud to really hear anything else. Erin stared at me from across the ballroom, frozen mid-smile, like I had just rewound her perfect night to the one scene she didn't want played. Her body didn't move, but her eyes, wide, glassy, calculating, they didn't blink. Not once. Not even when Roman leaned in slightly to whisper something in her ear. He didn't know who I was. But she did. I didn't run. I didn't speak. I just stood there, surrounded by curious strangers in expensive clothes, all of them waiting for the story to unfold, like I was some kind of wedding crasher who'd walked into the wrong building. A waiter rushed to clean the glass around my feet. A woman in a silver dress muttered something about security. And Erin. Erin straightened her shoulders, lifted her champagne glass again, and said into the mic, "Excuse me." That was my husband. The word hit harder than anything else. Not ex, not Lowell. Not even friend. Just husband. Like a technicality. Like a warning. Like a fire she'd almost forgotten was still burning somewhere in the walls. Laughter followed. Nervous. Scattered. But the crowd accepted it. Roman clapped her back and kissed her temple. People returned to their drinks. A DJ started playing a soft, forgettable tune. And somehow, the universe moved on as if I hadn't just watched my wife declare her devotion to a stranger in front of 50 polished witnesses. She walked toward me slowly, her heels clicking on the marble like gunshots. I should have walked away. I should have disappeared back into the elevator like none of this ever happened. But I didn't. I stood there like the fool I was, like some loyal statue begging to be cracked open. When she reached me, her voice was so low only I could hear it. "What are you doing here, Lowell?" she asked, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear with that same hand Roman had just kissed. "Did you really think this would end differently?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not rage. Not sadness. Not even the questions I thought I had rehearsed in my head. I just stared at her. At this woman I barely recognized. "Please don't cause a scene," she added, softer now. "Let's not pretend you're surprised." That line broke something in me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell every single guest in that ballroom what she had done. I wanted to grab a microphone and spill the months of late-night anxiety, the cold dinners, the lies she served me with a kiss. But instead, I just asked one question. How long? She hesitated. And that told me enough. 15 months, she said at last, folding her arms like this was a boardroom debrief. It started on a retreat in Dallas. I didn't plan for it. It just happened. And it kept happening. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that belongs at a party. The kind that hurts your ribs and tastes like blood in your mouth. You brought me here, I said. You made me walk into this. You let me see it. She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She just said, I didn't think you'd come. And then Roman approached. Calm, confident, arrogant in the way only a man who thinks he's untouchable can be. He extended a hand to me like we were business partners. Lowell, right? Listen, this probably feels like a lot. I didn't shake it. I didn't answer him. I just looked at Aaron and whispered, You buried me before I even knew I was dead. Then I turned around, and I left the ballroom with nothing in my hands, not even the bottle of water I came in with. But she wasn't done, because the next morning, she showed up at my apartment. And what she brought with her, that's when things got truly insane. I hadn't slept. I didn't even try. I sat on the edge of my couch in the dark, staring at the blank television screen like it owed me answers. Every time I blinked, the ballroom replayed itself. Aaron's speech, the kiss, Roman's smug face, the look in her eyes when she said, Let's not pretend you're surprised. I'd always imagined that if something like this ever happened, I'd be furious. I'd break something. I'd scream. But instead, I felt hollow. Not just hurt, erased. Like the version of me that existed in her world had been quietly deleted long ago, and I was only just now seeing the notification. The knock came just after 6:30 a.m. I thought it might be the building manager again, the one who always gave me grief about parking slightly over the line. But when I opened the door, she was standing there. Aaron, hair in a low bun, no makeup, hoodie, no heels, holding a cardboard box like she'd just been fired. Or maybe like I had. I didn't invite her in. I just stepped aside. She walked in like it was still her apartment, like nothing had changed. She placed the box on the coffee table and stood over it with her arms crossed. I stayed by the door, afraid if I got too close I might start screaming and never stop. I packed some of your things from the house, she said without looking at me. Photos, keepsakes, stuff I figured you'd want before I do anything permanent. I didn't answer. My jaw locked so tightly it hurt. She continued, like she was reciting lines from a meeting agenda. I also brought a letter. You probably won't want to read it now, but... Why? I asked. That stopped her. Her shoulders stiffened. Why what? All of it, I said. Why him? Why keep lying? Why bring me into a room full of strangers and announce him like you were collecting an award? Why 15 months? Why any of it? She looked at me then. Actually looked. And I saw something flicker. Regret, maybe. Or guilt. But not enough of it. I was tired of pretending we were happy, she said slowly. You always looked at me like I was some precious thing. Like I needed protecting. Like I was glass. Roman didn't look at me like that. He saw me as sharp, not fragile. I needed that. I felt my mouth go dry. So I was too kind to you? No, Lowell, she sighed. You were safe. And that stopped being enough. The box between us felt like it might explode. My fingers twitched. I wanted to pick it up and throw it out the window. Or open it and find some evidence this was all a dream. Instead, I asked, Did you ever think about just telling me the truth? She hesitated. I did. A few times. But every time I tried, you were just you. Folding laundry. Making dinner. Asking about my day. And I couldn't do it. So you let me walk into that room like a joke. That wasn't planned, she said quickly. I swear. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't even know how to explain you if someone asked. Roman knew about you, but he thought we were separated already. I let that slide. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because this was how she processed betrayal. Something she let slide. I stepped forward then and opened the box. On top was a picture frame. Us, 5 years ago, at a lake house we rented with friends. She was holding a sparkler. I was kissing her cheek. She'd written forever on the back in blue ink. Underneath it was the letter, handwritten, my name in cursive across the front. And beneath that, an envelope with banking paperwork. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. She saw the confusion in my face and added, I transferred the rest of what we had in the joint account to your name. I don't want anything from you, Lowell. I just want to move on. I opened the envelope. She wasn't lying. Everything was signed over. I didn't thank her. She walked to the door, opened it halfway, then paused. I'm sorry it ended like this, she said quietly. It didn't end today, I replied, still staring at the frame. It ended the day you stopped correcting people who called me your friend instead of your husband. I just wasn't smart enough to notice. She didn't close the door behind her. She left it wide open, but I still felt trapped. Because later that day, I found something buried under the paperwork at the bottom of the box. And that's when I realized I'd only scratched the surface of her betrayal. I almost didn't notice it at first. The envelope with the bank paperwork had been thick, too thick, but I assumed it was just old statements or maybe copies of joint bills. I'd already started tossing them aside, not even bothering to check the dates. The numbers didn't matter anymore. The relationship had already bankrupted me in every way that counted. But then, at the very bottom of the box, wedged under the documents and the photo album with our smiling, clueless faces frozen in time, I found it. A flash drive. No label. No case. Just a plain black USB stick taped to the bottom flap with a single piece of masking tape, like someone had wanted it to stay hidden until someone really looked. My first thought was paranoia. Maybe she meant to take it out. Maybe it was just old work stuff. Or taxes. Or something left over from our shared desktop I'd forgotten about. I stared at it for nearly 2 minutes before even touching it. But something about how deeply it had been tucked away felt off. Like it had weight beyond its size. Like it wasn't meant for me, but wasn't meant to be left behind either. I plugged it into my laptop. There were only 2 files. The first was a video. The second, a folder labeled Property. My stomach turned before I even clicked. I opened the video first. I had to. It started in a hotel room. One of those modern suites with mood lighting and white furniture. The camera was clearly set up on a tripod. The angle was deliberate. The frame centered. This wasn't a random phone recording. This was planned. Erin walked into view first, wearing the same green silk dress she had on during the company mixer. She smiled at the lens, a smile I hadn't seen in months. A private, shameless kind of smile. And then Roman walked into the frame. I didn't watch the whole thing. I couldn't. After 20 seconds, I slammed the laptop shut and backed away like it had burned me. My chest was caving in. My face was hot. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease. The comfort. The way she looked at him like she used to look at me, but with none of the nervous affection. Just hunger. Like he was a reward she thought she'd earned. She left that in the box. She left that in the box. Was it deliberate? Was she trying to hurt me? Or did she genuinely forget it was in there? I didn't know what answer would feel worse. All I knew was that this woman, the one who'd kissed my forehead in bed just 2 weeks ago, who still wore the bracelet I gave her on our first anniversary, had casually documented her affair like it was a vacation. And then labeled it Property. My hands were trembling as I reopened the laptop, ignoring the video and clicking into the second folder. There were scanned documents, all PDF format, with names I didn't recognize. A few deeds. A car title. Some were signed by her. Some by Roman. And one, just one, had my forged signature on it. A vehicle registration transfer. For my car. I stared at the document, mouth open. The date on it was from 4 months ago, a week before she claimed she was helping a friend sell a used vehicle. I remembered it clearly. I even helped her skin something that night. She'd smiled at me the entire time. Made popcorn. Watched reruns. I had no idea I'd just assisted in stealing my own property. It got worse. Another document was for a shared storage unit under her name only. The inventory list? Personal items, client materials, photography equipment. But the photo embedded in the contract showed one of my guitars leaning against the wall, a guitar my dad gave me before he died. I'd been looking for it for months. She told me she'd probably donated it during spring cleaning. I felt sick. Like I was outside my body. Like I was watching someone else unravel. She hadn't just betrayed me physically. She'd started erasing me. Bit by bit. Slowly. Quietly. Stealing pieces of me and tucking them away while I made her coffee every morning and asked how her day was going. I shut everything down, pulled the drive out, and stared at it in my palm. I should have felt broken. But I didn't. Not exactly. I felt something new. Something worse. Like a ghost in my own life. And still, I had no idea what to do. Because just 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Check the Dropbox outside 421 Harding Avenue. She left something else. And just like that, I realized. This wasn't over. Not even close. I don't know what kind of person I expected to become after everything. Some people get angry. Some people seek revenge. I always assumed, in my worst nightmares, that I'd just quietly fade, become one of those pale, hollow men you see at diners with nothing in their eyes but the echo of being left behind. But as I stared at the text from that unknown number, the name Harding Avenue triggered something sharp. It wasn't a complete address to most people, but I knew it. That was the location of Aaron's company's first office, back when they were just a rented co-working space and a dream team of underpaid interns. The building was mostly storage now, rarely visited, according to her. But the message was clear. Check the drop box outside 421, Harding Avenue. She left something else. She. Not Aaron. She. No name. No signature. And yet whoever sent it knew more than they should have. I sat in the car for 20 minutes after I parked beside the old brick building. It was early evening, overcast, and the street was nearly deserted except for a flickering street lamp and a rusted-out food truck that looked abandoned. The building loomed with boarded windows and a padlocked side door, the kind of place you'd walk past faster at night. But sure enough, there it was, a drop box on the far left wall, metal and scratched, the kind used for document returns or key drops. It looked empty. But when I opened it, I felt the weight before I saw the contents. A large manila envelope sat inside, sealed with red tape and marked only with a black X across the front. There was no writing, no label. Just that. I took it back to my car and locked the doors before opening it. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the flap. Inside were photographs. Not printed ones, real, old-school photographs on glossy paper, some bent at the corners. At first, I couldn't tell what I was looking at. They were dark, grainy, taken at night. Parking lots. Buildings. A car I recognized. My car. Parked outside an upscale condo complex I'd never been to. Then a series of shots showing Aaron walking into that building, on multiple nights. Not just with Roman, with others. Men I didn't know. One time, a woman. Always laughing. Always dressed to kill. Never alone. In one of the photos, she was kissing a man I'd never seen before. A silver-bearded guy in his late 50s. It wasn't Roman. It wasn't a coworker I knew. And it definitely wasn't a work client. Her hand was on his chest. His keys dangled from his fingers. Her wedding ring was gone. Some of the timestamps went back nearly 2 years. 2 years. That was before we'd even had our biggest anniversary trip. Before the therapy. Before the late-night tears and promises to try harder. Before any of the excuses. This wasn't an affair. This was a lifestyle. I turned the envelope upside down, and one final thing fell out, a note written in tight, small handwriting. If you're ready to know what she's really been doing, meet me at Blackridge Storage Unit 12. Tomorrow. Noon. No signature. No contact info. No hint who it was from. But I already knew what I had to do. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was stupidity. Maybe it was obsession. Maybe I just needed to believe there was still something to find, something that would make this feel less like I'd been living in someone else's costume for the past decade. I barely slept that night. My dreams were a mess of faces I didn't recognize and voices I couldn't place. My own voice sounded unfamiliar in my head, smaller somehow. Even more so when I woke up at 5 a.m. and caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked like a man who'd been buried and was still trying to claw his way out. Blackridge Storage was on the edge of town, the kind of facility that didn't ask questions and operated 24/7 through a keypad and a rusting fence. I arrived early, parked far from the entrance, and waited in my car, just watching the units from a distance. Everything felt like a trap. My heartbeat wouldn't settle. At 11:59 a.m., a small black hatchback pulled up near Unit 12. A woman stepped out. I didn't recognize her at first, short brown hair, large sunglasses, heavy coat despite the weather. But when she pulled off the glasses, my blood ran cold. It was Chloe, Aaron's former assistant. The one who vanished last year without any explanation. Aaron had told me she found a better job and moved on. But Chloe looked nervous now, pale, like she was hiding just by standing still. She motioned for me to follow. I got out slowly. The air smelled like dust and rust. We walked to Unit 12 in silence. She unlocked it with a key from her coat pocket. The door rolled open with a loud metallic screech. Inside wasn't furniture. It wasn't old files. It wasn't storage. It was evidence. Rows of file boxes. A whiteboard covered in photos. Names. Notes. Travel itineraries. Emails. Receipts. Half of it connected by red thread. Aaron's face in the center. Roman's off to the side. And at least 4 other people I didn't recognize. Chloe turned to me and said quietly, "She wasn't just cheating on you, Lowell. She was building something. And you were supposed to be the last one to find out. I stood there, stunned, barely breathing. Building what? Her eyes didn't waver. A business. A scam. A partnership. A network. And just like that, the infidelity became the least of my worries. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stood there in the cold steel mouth of Unit 12, staring at what looked like a crime documentary exploding in real time. There were no cobwebs, no dust. Everything was recent, deliberate, clean. Someone had been here not days ago, but hours. Maybe minutes. Chloe walked past me toward the back wall, where she flipped on a hanging bulb, revealing more folders on shelves and a printer that was still warm to the touch. I didn't know how to reach you, she said, glancing over her shoulder. But I knew you'd come eventually. She always underestimates how far people are willing to go once they feel betrayed. My mouth was dry. I looked around again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Photos of Erin, not just in social settings, but in boardrooms, airports, lounges, sometimes with Roman, sometimes not. One showed her shaking hands with a man whose face was blurred out, next to a briefcase. Another was of a check, 6 figures, with her signature on the back and a business name I'd never heard of, Orion Strategies LLC. Start talking, I finally croaked. From the beginning. Chloe took a deep breath, then nodded. Erin started Orion Strategies with Roman and a man named Greg Taylor. They called it a private client consultancy, but that's just code for something else. Their clients were wealthy, mostly men, mostly married, looking for discretion. Sometimes it was image management, sometimes business favors, but a lot of it, most of it, was manipulation, high-end relationship engineering, staging affairs, manufacturing leverage, blackmail setups. I didn't know the full picture until it was too late. I felt the floor tilt under me. You're saying she runs a service that helps people cheat? Chloe shook her head. Not exactly. She builds false relationships that look real, sometimes for money, sometimes to help a client gain control in a divorce, sometimes just to damage someone's reputation. And she's good at it. Cold. Calculated. Erin never gets her hands dirty. She lets other people fall in love with her, ruin themselves, then walks away with everything. I grabbed one of the folders off the shelf and opened it. Inside were printed emails. My name came up more than once. There was even a calendar marked with Phase 2, disengagement from Elle. My chest went cold. You were her cover, Chloe added. The husband. The stability. The background noise. You made her believable. But she never planned to keep you in the end. That's why she got sloppy. Roman wasn't even supposed to last this long. My fingers clenched the folders so tightly the edges bent. Why are you showing me this? Why now? She hesitated. Because I was her test run. I didn't even realize it. I fell for her too. Thought she was empowering me, mentoring me. Then she made me sign something I didn't understand, and suddenly I was the fall guy for one of her clients' tax scandals. I lost my job. Almost got investigated. She paid me to disappear. I took the money, but I kept copies. My brain was spinning. Every moment I thought had been real. Every quiet evening, every trip, every apology, all of it was a prop in some carefully engineered performance. My own marriage had been a business strategy. And yet somehow, I still wanted to find a reason to doubt it. To believe Chloe was exaggerating, misinformed, bitter. But then she opened one last drawer. Inside was a stack of handwritten letters, all addressed to me. Some dated over a year ago. They were written by Erin, and they were never meant to be sent. Chloe handed me the top one. I didn't read these. I couldn't. But she brought them here, stored them here. And that means something. I unfolded the first letter and immediately recognized her handwriting. Neat, sharp, always slanting slightly to the left. The opening line made my heart stop. Lowell, if you're reading this, then I failed to keep you innocent. I never meant for you to become part of the collateral. I couldn't keep reading. Not yet. The Erin I knew or thought I knew was unraveling, and this time not because of her lies, but because of the tiny, terrifying truth underneath, that somewhere in the middle of using me, she might have actually loved me. Or she loved what I gave her. Security. Normalcy. A mask. And now that the mask had fallen, I didn't know who I was without it either. I looked up at Chloe, my voice barely audible. What do I do with all this? She didn't blink. You don't destroy her. You outsmart her. That's the only thing she doesn't expect. I stared back down at the files. At the evidence. At the letters. Somewhere, Erin was still moving pieces on the board. Still calculating. Still pretending to be everything to someone who didn't know they were next. But for the first time, I wasn't a piece. I was something else now, and she had no idea what I'd do next. The air outside the storage unit was colder than I remembered, or maybe I just felt different walking back to my car with that envelope of letters clutched to my chest like a detonator. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. Instead, I parked in the back lot of a 24-hour diner and sat in the dark for over an hour, watching my windshield fog over from my breath, reading the first few lines of each letter and stopping every time my chest started to seize. They weren't confessions. Not really. They were rehearsals. Test runs for guilt. Words like, "You're better off without me," and "You were never supposed to see this side of me," and "I'm sorry, I didn't know how to be a good person without lying." Each letter peeled back another inch of skin from a version of her I'd never been allowed to see while we were married. She was the architect and the arsonist, carefully designing the house we lived in and burning it down while I made tea in the kitchen. I called my old friend Nolan at 2:18 a.m. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a year. The last time we talked, he told me Aaron gave him weird vibes. I ignored him. Told him he was overreacting. Now I was the one asking for a favor. Nolan's a forensic accountant. Doesn't sound exciting, but he's the kind of guy who can trace a hidden account through 5 countries and 3 fake businesses while sipping a Slurpee. I told him just enough to get his interest. He told me to meet him at his office in the morning. He didn't even ask why I waited until the middle of the night to call. That's how you know someone's really your friend. They just say, "I'll bring coffee." At 9:04 a.m., I dropped the folder labeled Orion Strategies on his desk. He raised an eyebrow and whistled low. "This is either going to ruin someone's career or make you very, very dangerous." "Both," I said. Over the next 5 hours, Nolan went through the documents like a surgeon. Wire transfers. Shadow accounts. A shell corporation registered in the Bahamas. One in Vermont. Fake invoices with real money behind them. He made copies, made notes, cross-referenced names and companies, and at one point just leaned back in his chair and said, "She's laundering money through emotionally fabricated relationships. This isn't just cheating, Lowell. This is fraud. Serious fraud." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it felt like I was watching a Netflix series with my face in the opening credits. "She owns a third of this?" I asked. "Officially," Nolan said, pointing to the printed documents. "No, but her name pops up in too many internal notes and emails to be innocent. She's the ghost director. She's pulling strings from behind the scenes. What happens if this goes public?" He didn't even hesitate. "She'll lose everything. Her career, her legal protection, maybe even her freedom. And so will Roman. But that's the thing, man, she's banking on you not having the stomach to go nuclear." That line stayed with me. Was he right? Had she studied me so closely, memorized my patience, my soft-spoken tendencies, my chronic indecision, that she thought even now, after all of this, I wouldn't strike? She thought I'd walk away, like I always did. But then I remembered the last line of the final letter, the one written in blue pen, no date, no greeting, just one line scribbled on the back of an old business card. "You were supposed to stay quiet, because you're safe. Please stay safe, Lowell." That wasn't guilt. That was a warning. She knew exactly how dangerous her world was. She built it. And she knew if I ever really saw it, someone else might want me gone. Nolan printed me copies of everything. Gave me a burner phone. Told me to keep everything in a secure place and not to contact her again unless I had protection. His tone had changed. He wasn't speaking as a friend anymore. He was speaking as someone who'd seen people vanish over far less. By that evening, I'd made 3 decisions. I wasn't going to confront Erin. Not yet. I wasn't going to destroy her. Not directly. I was going to leak every single file to the one place she feared more than court, her company's compliance board. Not from me. From a concerned party. Anonymously. Let them tear each other apart from the inside. Let Roman try to wriggle out of the mess. Let her scramble to clean up the pieces she thought were buried. Let the empire she built on charm, lies, and control collapse under its own weight. All I had to do was press send. But as I hovered over the final email draft that night, a new message popped into my inbox. No subject, no sender, just a single line of text. "You think this ends with her?" Attached was a photo, not of Erin, not of Roman, but of me, taken that morning, outside Nolan's office, from a distance. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't just uncovering a scheme. I was stepping into something far more dangerous. And someone was already watching. The photo haunted me. It wasn't blurry or accidental. It was crisp, deliberate. Taken from across the street, angled through the glare of a parked car's window. Whoever had sent it knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't just surveillance. It was a message. They knew where I was. They knew I wasn't staying silent. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt fear wrap around my ribs in a way heartbreak never could. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was survival. But fear has a funny way of crystallizing purpose. I could have backed off. Could have deleted everything. Packed a bag and vanished. But instead, I did something that would have shocked even the old version of me, the version Erin thought she'd broken. I printed every document, every photo, every transaction. I sorted them into folders marked with bright red tabs and mailed them, physical copies, to 3 separate places: a financial crimes unit I found in Atlanta, the ethics board of her company, and a trusted investigative journalist Nolan had a connection with. I didn't sign my name. I didn't include a return address. I used gloves, wore a hoodie, dropped each envelope at a separate blue mailbox across the city. Then I turned off my phone, packed my laptop, and drove west. Not to disappear, but to start over. I ended up in Asheville, North Carolina. It's a quiet town tucked into the mountains, full of bookstores and farmers markets and winding trails that smell like pine after it rains. I got a temporary place through a friend of Nolan's, nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, creaky floorboards, a view of trees instead of traffic. I started freelancing again. I fixed up an old bicycle someone left behind in the garage. I went to coffee shops where nobody knew my name. And for the first time in what felt like years, I exhaled. The fallout hit a month later. The news broke in whispers first, a scandal rocking a mid-sized PR firm in Atlanta. Terms like insider manipulation, offshore laundering, and undisclosed third-party operations were thrown around in carefully worded press releases. Roman stepped down. Erin went silent. A few staff members resigned. Some cooperated with authorities. A federal investigation was mentioned in one article, but it disappeared after that. She never reached out again, and I didn't need her to, because I wasn't the same man she left behind at that ballroom. I was someone who finally saw the whole picture and walked away from it without needing to burn it down. I kept one thing from all of it, though. A single photo. Not of Erin, not of Roman, but of me sitting on the edge of a mountain trail in Asheville, sweaty, tired, smiling for the first time without effort. Nolan had visited, snapped it without me noticing, and mailed it to me later with a note that said, "This is what rebuilding looks like." Sometimes I stare at that photo and wonder how close I came to losing myself completely. Sometimes I reread those letters Erin wrote and realize they were never about love. They were about power disguised as vulnerability. But mostly, I don't look back anymore. I still drink my coffee slowly. I still hate early mornings. I still talk to myself when I'm nervous. But now, I do all of that knowing one thing. She didn't break me. She freed me. And for the first time in years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.